Alright guys, today we're going to be recapping round 3 of the 2014 Millionaire Open. I was sitting at a score of 1-1 headed into this game. I had the black pieces, and I believe my opponent was going on upwards of 2,000 rated. I think something like 20 some points below 2,000. So any higher and my opponent would not have been eligible to play in this section. So a very, very strong pairing. I had the black pieces. My opponent played d4, and I played knight f6. I've mentioned in the past, this is a very, very flexible move. Knight f6 is useful in a lot of black lines against d4. So basically, as black, you're just saying, I want to see what white is going to do with his next move. I want to get a little bit more info before I decide what I want to play. My opponent played c4, and I played e6. I've analyzed a few games recently where my opponents went knight f3, and I played bishop b4, which is the Bogo Indian. My primary weapon in this line is the Nimzo after knight c3 and bishop b4 is what I am aiming for. My opponent played knight c3, and I played bishop b4, and this is the Nimzo Indian defense. The idea basically behind this opening is that at some point I might like to take on c3, disrupt these queenside pawns, and then play like knight e4, f5, b6, bishop b7, fight for control over this e4 square. If any of you guys have seen my f4 openings that I've played, it's a very similar idea. It's just with the black pieces. So my opponent played queen c2. A lot of different moves you can play in this position for white. Queen b3, variation invented by Yasir Sarawon, one of the greatest American players of all times. What else? There's knight f3, there's e3, there's a3. This is a very, very deep opening. There's a lot of different routes you can go as white and black. But after queen c2, I made the decision to take on c3. Now, if I had this game to do over again, I would not rush this capture. That's one way I've grown since playing this game in 2014. I wouldn't rush this capture. It's not going anywhere. And I would probably just castle or play b6. b6 with the idea to go bishop b7, fight for control over e4, castle. Obviously another strong option. But in this game I played bishop takes c3, queen c3, and knight e4. Obviously we are hitting the white queen with tempo. One of the issues potentially with playing this move order that I played is if my opponent knows what he's doing, he might be able to force me into a situation where I'm not able to play b6 and bishop b7. So queen c2, so he's attacking my knight, and I played f5. Now, one big mistake you don't want to make here as white is to play pawn to f3, which is instantly going to get you into a losing position after queen h4. g3, there's knight g3, h3, and queen h1. And if not g3, then king has to go here, and this is just knight f2, king moves, knight takes h1. Black's completely winning. So don't play f3 if you have this position with the white pieces. Play knight f3 or something along those lines, e3. Knight f3 was played, and I castled. So my opponent needs to activate his bishops. He needs to get his king to safety. So he played g3, the idea to fianchetto his light square bishop on the long diagonal. In which case he's also going to be fighting for control over this long diagonal if I play b6. And this is kind of what I was just talking about a second ago, because I played d6, bishop g2, and knight d7. And I opted to not go for this line with b6. And here's the reason, because of the move order I used. If I go b6 right away, bishop g2 and bishop b7, it might get a little awkward because my opponent might have knight d2 at his disposal. And now he is attacking my knight 3 times. It's only defended 2 times. And you might be thinking, well, this isn't that big a deal. We can just take on d2. The issue with that move is there's bishop takes b7. And not only is your knight undefended on d2, the rook on a8 is trapped, and black is just simply losing at this point. So, one of the downsides of rushing bishop takes c3, like I did in this game. So I went a different route, d6, bishop g2, and knight d7. And the idea is I want to play queen e7 and e5 maybe. And at a later point I will look to develop this bishop somewhere. But I'm not in a hurry. Queen e7 and knight d2. And now you can just imagine if this pawn was on b6 and the bishop was on b7, I have a lot of pressure going on this long diagonal. Plus my bishop on b7 will be undefended. I opted to take the knight on d2. There's not really a whole lot of options. Coming back doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really accomplish anything. He is threatening to win a pawn with knight e4, pawn e4, bishop e4. So we don't want that. So the only there's really no other option. Because if I put the knight here, again, he can just take, and take. And he's just up a pawn. And he has already achieved a winning position here. So there's really nothing better for me to do than take on d2, bishop d2. And then I hit in the center with e5. Just trying to gain some space. I want to bring my knight to f6 here in a second. I'm going to need to defend the b pawn, maybe rook b8, before I move my bishop. Because if I move my bishop right away, this pawn's going to be hanging. So I got to watch out for that. He took, and I took. So at this point, the pluses for white in the position obviously are the fact that he has the 2 bishops and I do not. But I do think white and black both have chances, and it's very solid for both sides. Slightly more pleasant for white, but not winning. White improves his bishop, very natural, bishop c3. So now this bishop's on the long dark square diagonal, and this one has complete control over here. So those bishops are very, very nice. I played c6. The idea is I want to blunt this bishop and take away some of its scope. One thing I do have to keep in mind here, though, is I do need to get this bishop out. I do need to move this rook, and I am going to need to move this knight as soon as possible. White's pieces are definitely more active than mine, and I can't play this game without my bishop, knight, and my rook being active. So e3 and e4. I decided that yes, I am giving the dark squared bishop a lot of scope here on this diagonal, but I'm also blocking off the light squared bishop. And I'm opening up some possibilities. I need to move the knight so that my bishop can move. So I'm opening possibilities of possibly even going knight e5. Knight e5, if the knight could go to e5, white doesn't really want to trade his dark square bishop for my knight. But on e5, my knight is threatening to go to d3, where it would be very, very annoying for the rest of the game. So rook a d1, and I opted for knight f6. I'm not exactly sure, looking at this position now, why I didn't play knight e5. It just seems very, very pleasant to put the knight on e5. And then white's really going to have to decide, does he want to let the knight go to d3, where it's just going to be a nuisance the rest of the game, but he still has the bishop pair, or does he want to trade the bishop and play this position? This position, I feel like it's trending towards being very pleasant for me. White's active bishop is gone, and his g2 bishop is very, very passive at this point and not doing much. But I opted to play knight f6. h3 was played. I don't know, maybe keeping my knight out of g4. Bishop e6, just completing development. Bishop e5. Bishop e5, obviously, got to be careful to not allow bishop d6 hitting the queen and the rook. So we bring the rook to the open file. We offer a trade of pieces. I do remember thinking that I really don't feel like I ever achieved winning positions for most, or winning chances for most of this game. So I was very comfortable just offering exchanges. My opponent was over 100 points higher rated than me, was coming off a loss, and I didn't really get any sort of a big initiative out of the opening, so definitely just looking to play some peaceful chess here. And now c5 was played, a very, very strong move. Again, the idea is now this pawn is controlling d6. So my opponent is threatening bishop d6. And that bishop would be very annoying on the d6 square. Now, the downside... I can't get rid of this line for some reason. The downside is he does give me more control over the light square diagonal. And he does give me the d5 square for my knight. So it's kind of a hit and miss here. You know, he has the d6 square for his bishop, but now I can post something on d5. And I played knight d5, which is a very, very strong move. Again, in a different way now, guys, I am threatening to go knight b4. I will be attacking the a2 pawn twice, and I'm potentially going to put the knight in on d3 like we discussed earlier. So white's move a3. White did not go a3. Oh, he went rook d4 to control the b4 square. a3 would be the other option. So a5. Now I want to drop the knight into b4, hit the queen, hit the a2 pawn, maybe put the knight in on d3, or maybe just take the a2 pawn. So a3 is very natural. And I played bishop f7, uncovering an attack on this dark squared bishop. And my opponent played bishop d6, which is kind of what you would expect. And I moved the queen to e6. On here, white is a little bit better, but again, white never really develops any sort of initiative in this game. I do remember offering multiple draws during this game that were declined, but we didn't really, nothing really big happened until the end. g4, so white's trying to, I don't know, create some pressure on my f5 pawn. I decide to solidify that square. Queen d2, queen e2, rook e8. At this point, guys, it's mostly shuffling. I'll stop when it gets interesting. Okay, so now knight f6. So now we're attacking the g pawn 3 times. It's only defended by the pawn and the queen. So now white has to make a decision. Push. He can't really defend it. f3 we just take. f3 takes. And then we can actually take on e3 because our queen and our rook hit this. And now we're just much better. So f3 is not an option. And if you can't play f3, then you're going to have to take or push. My opponent opted for bishop... What? That was what was played? Or is my analysis being screwy? Bishop g3, and I played knight d5. Huh. Okay, so I guess on fg4, hg4, queen g4, knight g4, we're down a pawn, but he has rook d7, hitting our bishop and our b7 pawn. That's the idea. So I don't really like the rook on the 7th, so I avoided that variation, and I played the move knight d5. So block the rook off. But now we don't have that pressure against g4 like we did before. So knight f6. This is where I tried to offer a repetition in the position because it didn't really feel like white was trying to win this game. And my opponent switched it up and played g5. Okay. So knight d5. Queen d2. Again, white has the 2 bishops, and if he could somehow utilize that, maybe he could create some chances, but that doesn't really end up happening in this game. And I think part of that reason is because this light squared bishop is kind of important in defending the h3 pawn. Because you can imagine if the bishop is somewhere over on this side of the board, that h3 pawn, all I got to do is push the f pawn, and I'm threatening a checkmate. So I played b5. The idea is if en passant, we take the bishop on d6. So I really was trying to play for a draw, so this seemed fitting. It can't be taken, and I'm just locking up the board more. And then b4 was played. And here I remember thinking, now I might actually have some chances. And again, b4 is not a good move. You just take, white takes, and then you play rook a4. And now this knight on d5 is looking very useful. The knight on d5 is hitting b4. The rook on a4 is hitting b4. White's pieces are pinned down to defending this. And I'm going to have the opportunity to move the e8 rook to the a file. And then I'm going to have ideas of rook a2. And then I am going to be the one who's playing for the win. So my opponent played queen b2. I played king g8. Important to get off of this diagonal before white plays like rook e4 check. Winning our queen on the spot because we'd have to move, and then he just takes our queen. So we have to play king g8. We got to get off those dark squares. And then rook a1. And actually queen b2 is a very crucial move. Because if there's not queen b2, then I have rook e to a8. And he can never challenge me on the a file with his rook. But the queen move here gives him the opportunity to challenge with rook a1. So it's very, very fortunate that queen b2 move is there. So I doubled rooks. Obviously there's going to be an exchange. And I'm slightly better. I'm not winning, but it's a pleasant position. And now we kind of just shuffle around. And here I missed the move knight b4. And we are attacking his queen twice. If he takes our queen, we're just going to be up a pawn and we're going to have a much better position. And we're going to be able to move our knight at some point and just start pushing our b pawn and win this pretty easily. What if rook b4? Because that defends the queen, right? While we just take the queen. And we play this position. And not only are we up an exchange, we're going to just play bishop c4. And we're going to push the pawn up the board. And that's a pretty easy win there. So I did let my guard down a couple points in this game. Queen b3, I should have seen knight b4. I did not. I played queen c8. I think I was so focused on just activating my queen on the a file. Same idea as I would have had with my e8 rook, getting it to the a file. And this is not a bad move, but I could have won material with knight b4. Queen b2. Queen e6, and again I shuffled. And my opponent played king h2. I played bishop e8. I have a slightly better position, but I feel like white is defending everything. But will not agree to the draw because I offered multiple draws that were declined. So I just started shuffling things around, trying to get the same position 3 times. And then bishop h1 was played. And apparently that is a blunder because there's queen e7 hitting this pawn. And on h4, oh, there's knight e3. Nice. On fe3, guys, there's rook a2, pinning the queen to the king. So that will be a winning position because I'm just going to be up a pawn he can't take. And then I'll move the knight back and play like f4 probably at some point. Okay, so that was a miss. That was a miss there. Oh, no. Let me see. Yes, no, I'm sorry. I saw queen e7, h4, and I saw knight e3. So I missed a tactical sequence earlier, but I did see this. Rook d6, and here's where I kind of let this winning position slip away. I played knight f1, and I end up taking the bishop on g3. Here do I just have knight c4? Knight c4 looks like it wins an exchange. But I guess after queen d4, the c pawn going to d6 is going to be very, very strong. And I'm going to be stuck passively defending against that. Because it actually says the best move is rook a2, attacking the queen. And that makes sense. Queen c1, and then knight d5. Yeah. And black is just dominating this position at this point, so this is a big... But instead, I played, after rook d6, I played knight f1, check, and I took the bishop, which was not the correct thing to do. King g3, still slightly better, but bishop d5, defending my c6 pawn. Again, I had rook a2. I had rook a2, which was better. Rook a2, queen moves, and then bishop d5. Queen d4, and now I'm don't even have a winning position anymore. Rook a7, king f4, and rook d7. And rook f6 was played. And I played e3, which completely blows everything. Again, I don't remember what my train of thought was on this. He took rook d5 and then played queen e3. And actually, due to the nature of his active rook and my king being stuck over here, if we trade queens, I'm just going to lose this position because the c6 pawn is going to fall. He's going to go rook b6, take on b5. And then I'm just going to be 2 pawns behind. So queens can't be exchanged. I checked. And this is where he slipped. So rook d6 is the move that has to be played. And it's funny because that kind of looks like it blunders a pawn, doesn't it? What if I take? What if I take? He just checks. King g7. Oh, and goes queen e5. Very nice. Boom. King moves. And then takes. And he has a pawn that's 2 squares from queening. He's going to win that position. Very nice. Very nice. But rook d6 was not seen. Instead, king f3 was played. And after I found a couple of... played a couple moves, and then rook e6, which completely blows all of White's position, ill advantages. And this is the last moment he was winning prior to this move. A very, very back and forth game. So here, all you have to do for black is find the correct move sequence. And you do still have to be a little careful after trading rooks that you play the right move. Because White's queen is going to be very active. Your c6 pawn might fall off. You don't want the pawns falling with check, because then you could just easily lose this position. I played rook e6, queen e6, and then the very accurate move, queen h2. Just saying, if you take on c6, first of all, you're going to lose. Queen h1, skewering this king and this queen. So queen c6 is out. As a move, queen takes c6 is out. And at this point, black's queen is just too active. So white played check, 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 and then agreed to a draw. Very, very back and forth game. There were only a couple moments that I had true winning chances. I missed the first tactical opportunity. I saw it the second time, but then responded badly with knight f1 check. Just completely the wrong train of thought to try to take the bishop on g3. And again, this game was so long ago, I can't even, say what my train of thought was. Perhaps, I was just mentally tired from being in these super, super long games, or maybe I just got lazy and didn't calculate, or let my guard down. Like, could be all sorts of reasons, but definitely an interesting game, and, a draw against a very strong opponent. Somebody who outrated me by about 100 points. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed that game. Yeah, I'll be back for the next game at a later point. Thank you very much.